So I've side loaded my brush and I'm going to shade along the bottom of my leaves and just up a bit. You can follow in the photo. This one I base coated a little bit pointed at the end. So we'll shade and we'll come back and do up the middle after if you choose. It doesn't matter. Along the bottom next to the flower and up the side. It's rough on the fabric to shade. It's not anything like shading on our wood. Here, I'll shade so it's under this leaf. This one, I'll shade along the bottom and up the side a bit. You always want to have a shadow next to the flower because the flower is on top. And you can choose a side that you want to look like it's curled under a bit, so you would shade a bit there. I'm going to come a little bit over here. Not sure what I've got on my picture, but... And then once we're doing the same thing on our wood, but once they're dry, and these are not dry yet, but it doesn't matter on the fabric. It doesn't wipe off on me like it would on the wood. And I can just come a little bit up the middle to give mine a bend. We are going to come back after with a highlight. That we will wait till it's dry. And we are going to put a vein down the middle too, so if you don't want to shade down the middle, you don't have to. So I'll put that aside and I'll flip this guy over, and this is going to be the very same. So we're going to shade, walk it out a bit, nice. I made a little mess over there. And then this is the same, we want to separate our two leaves. So I will shade like so. Walk that out. So you'll continue like that on all of your leaves. Okay, I'm going to float a little bit of my highlight mix. There. Now it does die down on our fabric very easy. And it'll look quite a bit brighter on our wood pieces. So I'm adding my highlight on there. And I'll put a little here. I'll flip it up. Float my highlight down there. And I'll put a little in the middle. Walk it out. Lean to the water side of your brush more as you're told to walk it out. And then I'm going to take, I'm saving a little bit there. And my wood is a little rough here, but that adds to the look of it. So we're going to take our liner. I want a small liner, and I want a thin plantation pine. And we're going to add veins. So they've got to be thinned. And I'll come off the tip. Sometimes just a light little bit of outlining. You see how I'll just bring a tip off of the end there. I'll come up on the top. And just a loose bit of an outline. So you see the difference that adds. It brings the highlight in there nicely. So at first the highlight might look a little bright, but once the veins are coming through there, it doesn't. Okay, so we're going to go through and do that, and then on the fabric where I highlighted, I only highlighted these ones here. And this will crisp up a little bit on the edge, but it is fabric. It's going to have that bumpy edge. So we'll outline this. Again, a few veins. You can add as little or as many as you like. We're going to add some little bit of phantom leaves in here as well. There. So that is my outlining and highlighting on that. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to be shading to separate our petals. So I'm using my blush pink. And don't be cheap with your blending on this one and loading. On the fabric, it takes a little bit more, so we walk it out. Okay, so again, it doesn't really matter if you're highlighting or shading the very same ones. You just know that one petal overlaps another. So if this is shaded up here, that means this petal's on top. That would put this petal on top. So I just work my way around the flower like that, leaving the other petal on top. And you just walk it out because we're going to strengthen that up with Merlot. And I'm going to do the same thing over on my wood piece. I'll just get that out of the way right now while I'm doing this. Nice and soft, walk it out. So we're going to do each petal. I'm just going to find my underneath guys and go with them first. And the same thing here. So we'll go around. And I'll do all of those. So you'll walk it out the same as we did on the fabric. It's easy to find them. One thing you want to do is make sure you know where your flower overlaps the others. So that's this guy. He's only half of a flower that we see under here. So he would have shadow all the way along there. So you see how that now lifts this flower up above. Okay? So we're going to work them all the same. I'm going to strengthen my shading with my mix of the Cherry Merlot and the blush. So it's going to come in here, and of course you don't walk it out as far. Our point is to strengthen, not to delete the other color. So we will be adding a highlight, So I can just add that highlight now. So I have mixed some baby blush with a little bit of white. And I've mixed that, and I'm going to float a highlight. So I'll do that before I add our little veins and things. So we would choose, so I'm going to come along the edge of that petal and come in a bit, because that petal is my overlapping petal. So we always like our highlight to come down a bit to float. And if you can, give your petals a little bit of definition. A little bit of a wiggle out. Even if you don't have that there, you can do it anyways. You can add that. And then this being on top of our leaf is going to make my shading on the leaf enhanced quite a bit. And then again, remember, we're going to, this petal here works out that it is on top of both of them. So I strengthen there and a little bit along the edge. So you see how that pops that up compared to this. It really defines the edges. And a little on that edge of the bud. So at any time with these, you can take a little bit of the tint of our flower color. So I've got the mix there. I'm just going to come up and see how pretty that is to add a little to our greenery. You don't do every leaf, but just come up with that Cherry Merlot mix, and I'm putting a little bit of a tint on the odd leaf. All right, so I'll continue on, and I will do the same, thank you, on my block. Now it's going to be easier to shade on the block than on the fabric, but I want to remember not to choke out all of my baby blush. I should still see that in there. So I don't walk this one out as far. And I'll continue on the other side. Anywhere a flower petal overlaps the other, we want to make sure that it keeps. We can thank Melissa here, the producer, for keeping us in focus. And then I'm going to put our highlight. So our highlight is that mix of baby blush and some warm white or bleach sand even. You could even use baby blush, or you could, you could use pink chiffon. You're mixing the white with it to come to a pink chiffon. So, okay, we're doing the same thing on that. Here we are going to assemble the sewing block. So what I've done is I've taken a bag of sand. This is a zippy bag, and I left enough room in the bag before I twist tied it with a little bit of wire or twist tie, whatever you use. And I left enough room, I didn't do it tight, so I was able to manipulate the sand and move it around. So I kind of wanted to make it into a little bit of a roundish type of thing, tuck in the corners of my baggie underneath. I'm sure all you seamstresses out there could probably sew a little round sack and fill it with sand, and it would be perfect. So once I've done that, and I'm not going to glue underneath the bag of sand because it's going to melt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off of my stand, take my little piece of wire out of the way, and I'm going to apply glue all the way around the outside edge. Then I put my bag back on, And I'm going to put a piece of just regular stuffing, batting, whichever you might call that. And I'm going to press that into the glue. And this, trying to keep it in a nice round muffin top look. So once I have that, I've got 2 other quilt battings that I was given. So I'm wanting to have some strength so that it keeps its shape. So I'm using both of them. Don't know much about either of them, but they're pretty cute. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to set, I can cut them both at the same time. I'm going to set this on top and just get the basic excess out of my way. So we'll just trim them off. I design this stuff in my mind. I'm not really the greatest at putting it all together. All right, that's good enough. See, this one wasn't as round. So now I'm going to still go around again and put glue. All this is to hold this in place at this point in time. I'll put these on top and I'm just going to press down and adhere those to that glue. So I don't have, I'm going to trim that little bit excess off the edge there, because when I glue my fabric in place, it's getting glued to the bottom. So when it's going to be glued to the bottom, it's going to hold all of this in place. This glue that I'm pressing it into right now is just so that it doesn't move on me while I'm doing that. I don't want to put glue up here because that's what our needles are going to go in, and we don't want to have to fight with a spot that has glue gun glue. So now I'm taking my painted piece. I didn't know where I put it. Now what's important to me that I've painted on here is this section right here joins up. When I bring this over, it's going to join up to that part right there. So the painting carries on. This one is just over onto the side. So I want to make sure that this is going to be right down at the edge. That's the only guy that really matters. So that will be the first place I'm going to glue. Because I want that to be right at the edge, I position it where I want it. And I'm going to apply my glue. And of course I didn't put on my little fingers that I need. And I'm going to gather it as I go so that I get a fairly even pucker as we go. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that. I would bring this side over here now and apply it. And you see, I'm not having tons of fabric under here. That's important because we don't want this to stick up too much from our block. So I'll just put a little bit here. And I'm going to be trimming off the excess. So do you see what I mean by pulling it over to give it that little bit of a pucker? I want to end up having a bit of a pucker all the way around. So I'll do the same thing. I'll bring in the next corners of my fabric, glue those, and then bring my puckers all around. Okay, so that's what we're going to do.